Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio.
Hello, friends. Welcome to Kardec Radio. My name is Teresa Castro, and this is the Sunday 6 p.m. Prayer for Peace program. Welcome, everybody. And I just wanted to add, in a previous prayer, we did some readings from the book by Carlos Pastorino, which is the Minutes of Wisdom. And I wanted to add that this book is not yet translated into English, but Kardec Radio and its team has done some translation, and you can find it in the Spiritist magazine. If you go to spiritistmagazine.org, you can read the magazine online for free. You can download it digitally for free, or you can, there's a small price for it if you'd like it mailed to your home. So that is available to read in English. Most of the later issues, the more recent issues in the Spiritist magazine, do have some of the Carlos Pastorino daily prayers translated. So feel free to read them. They're beautiful messages. So today, before we have our prayer, I wanted to do a little bit of a reading on one of the healings that occurred when Jesus was disseminating Christianity and his gospel of love. And this healing is in particular the blind man of Jericho. And so I'm going to be reading out of the New Testament, the story, just so we can remember, because there's a couple healings with blind people, and this is not the healing where Jesus spits in the mud and puts the mud on his eyes and the man sees. This is not. So this is the blind man of Jericho that is healed. And then we're going to look at some interpretation by Andrei Moreira in his book, Healing and Self-Healing. He gives an interpretation of Jesus's healing and interaction with the blind man of Jericho. So just to remind us of the story, and this is the Gospel of Mark, chapter 10, verse 46 to 52. They came to Jericho, and as Jesus was leaving with his disciples and a large crowd, a blind beggar named Bartimaeus, son of Timaeus, was sitting by the road. When he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to shout, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." Many of the people scolded him and told him to be quiet, but he shouted even more loudly, "Son of David, have mercy on me." Jesus stopped and said, "Call him." So they called the blind man. "Cheer up," they said. "Get up, he is calling you." So he threw off his cloak, jumped up, and came to Jesus. "What do you want me to do for you?" Jesus asked him. "Teacher," the blind man answered, "I want to see again." "Go," Jesus told him, "your faith has made you well." At once he was able to see and followed Jesus on the road. And so there's a beautiful book that has been translated into English. However, it's no longer available in English, the book. So let's take a look. This book is Healing and Self-Healing by Andrei Moreira, and he is a spiritist medium. He's also a medical doctor, and he wrote this book. And in this book, he gives an interpretation of this healing the blind man of Jericho. And what he says is that Bartimaeus, who was the blind man of Jericho, he was seen as a beggar. And Moreira explains to us this symbolizes the denial of personal power It's an attitude of victim. It's when someone is removed from their self, their essence, and they don't recognize their own inherent abilities and beauty. And they're always kind of waiting for the external to change them. They're waiting to be taken care of, because it's not that they're so much lazy, but it's really that they've lost their own self-love. They're disconnected from themselves. They feel hostage to situations that they believe they can't change. And they wait for answers and happiness to come to them. So they're in this more or less victim role. And he says, Andrei Moreira, in his book, he says, there's causes to this. It can be caused by trauma, pain, ignorance, lack of confidence, lack of optimism. He goes on to describe the cloak as something that hides. So this beggar is sitting covered in this cloak, probably with his little cup, waiting for alms. And the cloak is, for us to understand, is when we wear a mask, when we're not transparent, we're hiding who we really are. And when we talk about, well, what happened to Bartimaeus? How did he decide to get out of that role of being a victim? And Moreira tells us the conscience, that he begins to know something deep within himself. His maturity has arrived, his spiritual awakening, and he starts to reconnect with his essence, his spirit. He no longer wants to be dependent, waiting for other people to bring him happiness. He wants to feel equal to others. He wants to secure his own happiness and health. And when he walks over to Jesus, he takes his cloak off, right? He drops it. And Moreira helps us to understand that this symbolizes or demonstrates his changed attitude. He no longer wants to be stuck in that victim role. And what does he say to Jesus? And Jesus asks him, what can I do for you? And he says, I want to see. So it's a sign of his maturity and wisdom. He's grown from his own spiritual healing. He's grown from his suffering and his pain. He's learned from it. And so he now is ready and willing, able to recognize his own inner beauty. And what does Jesus tell him? That his faith has healed him. His maturity has set him free. And then Moreira talks about Jesus. He says, in this story, we can see Jesus as the archetype of love, that he is the ideal for Christian practice. He represents love, eternal love, divine virtues, an example, mercy, divine laws, morality, ethics, and safety. And what happens when Jesus speaks to Bartimaeus? He says he tells him to come to him in the middle of the crowd. He does not go to Bartimaeus and kind of sit down next to him and huddle in secrecy with him. No, and Moreira says the reason for this is because Jesus is not pitying Bartimaeus. Because when we pity people, we only encourage that sense of disability. Oh, poor thing, poor you, you're a victim, you're special, you're different from everybody else. No, Jesus instead says, what do you want me to do for you? And Moreira says, in asking this, it's like demonstrating how we need to be aware of our own process, that when we're seeking healing, that it's conscious, that we're aware. It's not like we're zoned out and it's just happening to us. We're not a part of it. And with Jesus asking him, what would you like to receive? And Moreira says this is a validation of Bartimaeus' desire to want to change his attitude, to no longer want to be a victim. So Jesus is validating that by saying, what would you like to receive? No longer, not imposing on him that, oh, I'm going to heal you or make you see. Of course, the man wanted to see. He was blind. Everyone knew that. But it is that inner transformation within. It's not an external. It's not someone doing it for us. It's us making that effort to want to change. So Jesus commands Bartimaeus' sight to be restored. And how can we understand this about Jesus commanding? So, because Jesus, okay, he does tell him that his faith has healed him. But what we can understand about Jesus's commanding is that, and this is something we learn from Kardec in Genesis, part 2, chapter 15, item 2, is that Kardec reminds us of the superiority of Jesus over other humans. And this superiority was not anything particular about Jesus's body, but his spirit. He was not dominated by matter. In fact, Jesus completely dominated matter. He was able to command the particles of matter. And that of his perispirit, Jesus's perispirit, was drawn from the most quintessential portion of Earth's fluids, right? We draw and create our bodies and perispirits from the element of the planet that we live on. But we're only able to attract according to our own level of vibration. So Jesus, being a highly evolved spirit, he could, of course, attract the most quintessential fluids. So the quality of Jesus's fluids had immense magnetic power. And Jesus was pretty much a human form of love. He was exuding goodwill all over the place, which is not the case with many of us. So just by being in Jesus's presence, many people were healed. So, but we remember that Jesus said to Bartimaeus, your faith has healed you. And so again, Kardec helps us to understand this in the Gospel according to Spiritism, chapter 19. He tells us that there are attributes of true faith because and he gives us kind of a breakdown of different types of faith. So there can be a faith of arrogance, which is directed by pride, thinking that, I'm the healer, I'm doing it, not involving anything greater. I'm the greatest and I'm doing the healing. And we can see this coming from a place of pride. And we recognize this when we consider Judas. He loved the master, but he really thought he had better ideas. So this is stemming from pride. So he thought he kind of had to help Jesus along and, kind of put Jesus in a situation that he would perform great miracles in front of Pontius Pilate and Herod, which did not happen because that's not why Jesus came here. He also tells us about a shaky faith where we believe, and we can see this through an example of Nicodemus. He knew Jesus was the Messiah. He studied the law and he believed it. He knew it. But the idea of giving up all his, way of living and being a doctor of the law and following this man around in the desert with these, women and fishermen, he couldn't kind of wrap his head around that. So we can see that kind of as a shaky faith. There's some doubt there. And then we see a true faith. And this is what Kardec really hones in on when he says that a true faith, it's contagious. And we spread it not by preaching, but by living it. How we live, we exemplify it. And he says there's patience. And this patience is a calmness in the midst of struggle, knowing how to wait and knowing that we are children of God and that we're not going to be abandoned. Confidence. And it's knowing obstacles can be overcome. So it's not being cocky and arrogant, but being confident in knowing, assuredness, certainty, trust in God, but humility, knowing that we are instruments, that the power is God. So Kardec tells us when we have this true faith combined with goodwill, benevolence toward all, wanting good for others, that this can have an effect on the universal cosmic fluid. And therefore we can understand Jesus with his elevated spirit is able to command this fluid, these particles of matter. He's able to command. And then along with Bartimaeus' faith, the man is healed. So it's very interesting because through this story, Andrei Moreira in the book, Healing and Self-Healing, is suggesting to us that we can heal ourselves and that with the Spiritist movement and, by educating ourselves and by developing virtue, being in service to others, that we can transform. And that this really needs to be the message of Spiritism. And, encouraging this in our Spiritist centers instead of, oh, come here, we'll heal you, or just come here and get our passes once a week. No, but rather educating people to understand that inner transformation, our own responsibility and desire to heal needs to come from within. And we do have the ability to heal ourselves. Jesus told us, you can do more than I. So Kardec is pretty much on board with that when he explains in the book Genesis about healings and fluids, that Jesus was not performing things that were supernatural, that no, it was all within nature. We just, at that time, and even now, still today, we don't completely have the science down and we don't understand it. So we say, oh, it's supernatural. It's beyond us. We're not good enough, or, it's beyond natural law. And Kardec helps us to understand that no, that many of the healings happened because of manipulation of the fluids and also people's strong faith and belief. And then, of course, Jesus's presence, being an elevated spirit that he is. So I think this is a wonderful story to look at and break it down and to understand it and help us to maybe ask our own self about our own blindness. Maybe it's not with our physical eyes, but where are we maybe still holding on to a victim role and thinking that we're doomed or we can't change, and we need someone or something outside of us to fix us. Because Jesus's message was a gospel of love. And he gave us the commandments of love God with all your heart, your mind, and soul, and your neighbor as yourself. So we basically have the golden rule to follow that will help us in learning what it means to transform ourselves inwardly. Because we can gauge any thought, action, any word against that golden rule. Is is this what I want done to me? Is this what I want said to me? Is this what I want thought about me? And this can help be a guiding force in our life. So I encourage you all to take a look at the healings and the miracle healings of Jesus in Genesis, one of Kardec's codification books, and to get a better understanding of these healings and supposed miracles, to understand the workings, that they're not outside the law of nature. And in fact, Jesus is very encouraging when he tells many of the people, your faith has healed you. Go and sin no more. So these are beautiful stories. And as we take our studies of Spiritism and our understanding, we can really better understand them and have hope and not feel like they're beyond us or it's supernatural. We can never grasp it. It's too far away from us. No, we can really get a good handle through the Spiritist teachings. So, brothers and sisters, I invite you all to join with me in prayer, and taking with us this idea of healing and self-healing, and the idea of inner transformation and how this change, we need to change our insides instead of fixing, the wrinkle on our face or dyeing our hair or these are beautiful things, everything's God-given. But again, we're being invited to push that reset button and to start to look inward of changing ourselves and healing ourselves from the inside, instead of looking to, only seeing ourselves as the physical body, and as long as we look good. Because we all know beauty, health, wealth, power, youth, it's all fleeting. So Jesus was always inviting us to go for the eternal, to go for the lasting, the everlasting, virtues, values, way of life. So let us close our eyes and say hello to Mother, Father, God, and all the good spirits, our mentors, our familiar spirits, and even those spirits who don't like us so well. We say hello. We come with an open heart filled with gratitude. And we are so ever graceful for the mercy that we are blessed with day in and day out, forgiving us of the offenses we have caused to others, as we forgive those offenses that people cause to us, raising our vibrations, enabling us to be forgiven, and most importantly, to self-forgive. We come to this prayer in memory of our brothers and sisters who have more need than ourselves. And we pray that a helping hand may soon to be arrived, and that they may be receptive to the help, even though it may not be the help they are looking for or wanting. May we come to recognize you, Divine Creator, in every walk of our life, the good, the bad, the difficult, the joyous. And we ask for your continued blessings that the earth may be saturated with your divine love and light, so we may better come to know and understand you as we practice love and feel love. And we go forward in our week, bringing the story of Bartimaeus, the blind man of Jericho, and remembering that combination of goodwill and true faith can truly move mountains. And we say a big thank you to all the spirits who continue to protect and enable this Kardec radio platform to be available to so many, so many people, helping us to develop and fly more sturdy with our two wings of wisdom and love. We thank you for this prayer moment. And with humility, we ask permission to close this prayer session, and so be it. Thank you so much for joining me. I look forward to see you all again next week. And let us shed a little bit of that goodwill and help somebody else. Thank you so much. Many blessings.